What is up, everybody? It's your lovely host, Simone.
And this is Nafis.
And welcome back to I Was Thinking. Woo! Please bear with us, guys. It's been a while. I always say this. We're so inconsistent.
Yeah.
We record.
We're so consistently inconsistent.
That should really be the tagline of this podcast. And I feel like I said that before. I was thinking the consistent, inconsistent podcast.
Oh, really? It would work with us, though.
I feel like I have. This seems like deja vu, but anyway, yes, we're so inconsistent to where we're consistent in our inconsistency. So we take all these long breaks and then forget how to do this. We're so professional, right? Anyway, yes, we're back. Even though I posted 2 episodes recently, but those episodes we recorded was like 2 months ago. So yeah. Anyway, dude, how are you, Nafis? Just real quick.
I'm good. School's about to end, like public school.
Yeah.
In 1 week, thankfully. So I'll have the summer to myself. I'm not working this summer, so
that's a
hopefully
first.
It'll give me that much needed rest time.
Because you have usually 3 jobs. I said that's a first because you usually have 3 jobs.
I know. I'm like, I need a break.
You do. And I'm glad you're actually taking a break.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. What about you?
That's good. I'm just working. So yeah, going through life, working. But anyway, we could talk about that a little bit more later. Right now, we got a movie review to do. We are doing a Korean movie titled Dream, and we have some very famous people in it, especially our 2 leads. Let me not forget to do the disclaimer now. Any words or places we may mispronounce. This is names. Not our first language.
Yeah.
Did I not say name? Oh, I said words and places. Yeah. Listen, I'm tired. I did not get enough sleep last night. Yeah, all those good things. Please excuse us. Also, hopefully we're trying our best because, we have to go off translation. So I don't think too much is really lost in this movie as far as translation wise, but still, you never know. And we usually encourage everyone to at least be aware of this movie or watch the movies before we discuss them. Yeah. Because we are going to do spoilers. But if you don't care about spoilers, then please enjoy. Was there anything else I usually do beforehand or no? Was that it?
No, that was it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So let's get right into it. So basically, Dream is actually a 2023 film, but it was supposed to be released much, much earlier, and it was delayed because of COVID and all of that. So,
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they initially started everything, I believe, the casting and all of that was done in 2020, early 2020. And then they started filming end of 2020, and they were practically done by mid 2021. Everything was wrapped up by April of 2023 because of all the delays and everything. And then they just released it a year of sometime later. So, yeah, so this was a long-awaited movie. I don't think Park Seo-joon and IU, which are our 2 main leads, they ever were casted together, correct? I don't think I've seen them in anything together.
Not that I know of. I think this is the first thing they've both worked, have been in together. Yeah. So, and I remember seeing this premiere online, especially because, we all know I'm a BTS ARMY, because I think Taehyung went to the premiere because he's best friends with Park Seo-joon and IU as well, that I found out when he was on her YouTube show, IU's Palette, when he was promoting his solo album, Layover. But yeah, so I remember seeing those pictures and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, this was the first time that they were working together as leads. However, it's not a romantic movie, which I really, really, really appreciated.
Me too.
Yeah. So it's actually a sports comedy / drama film, and it's directed by Lee Byung-hun. Sorry. And then our leads are Park Seo-joon and Lee Ji-yeon, also known as IU.
Yeah, I'm surprised they used her stage name. I guess she's more recognizable as IU, but IU's pretty big. Yeah. Because, sometimes people will put the stage name, but then the real name in parentheses. I don't know. I'm also trying to think of other incidents with big celebrities if they usually just use their stage name. So maybe it's not as weird as I think it is.
I don't know. That's not something I really pay attention to.
Do they use her stage name in her dramas? Now I'll have to go back later on and look.
I think in her dramas they just use IU. Or they probably have it in parentheses. I don't know.
Because obviously I got into K-pop because of BTS, but when I started watching K-dramas, I didn't know she was a singer. I discovered IU through dramas and her acting.
Me too.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, did they use IU in drama she's in or not? I can't remember. Anyway, that's not important. So,
so yeah, where was I? Okay, yeah. So, released in 2023. It actually did relatively well in box office. They were able to get $8.3 million. And I think it was first or second place around the time as far as people going out and to watching the movies.
Cool.
I do predict, though, that it probably would have done better if it was released like a year before, because I think that's when the World Cup was actually happening. So it may have done better if it had been released when it was supposed to be released. But
the World Cup, I thought was in 2022, right?
I believe so, yeah.
I'm trying to think, because it's the same FIFA that Jungkook went to, right? Where he performed?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Dreamers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a sports person. I feel like I've said this before, but me and sports, we don't go together. In any sports. I used to play tennis, but...
Really? That's one of the sports that I actually used to play. Was tennis.
I played for a while too. I played all through middle school, and then I just stopped playing sports when I got into high school, and then I focused more on like arts. But I didn't start like dance and stuff until later because I was too shy. Kind of regret that. But also there was a phase where my dad was trying to get me into golf, just because also there's not like a lot of like, not even just Black people, but Black women that play golf. It was trying to be like a golf Serena and Venus Williams type thing. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm sorry. I'm so bored. I can't.
It's not everybody's cup of tea, but
it's not.
Yeah. All right. So that was basically the intro to that. So I'm going to just launch into like a summary, basically. I'm not going to go into like every detail. So obviously if there's some things you want to bring up, of course, bring that up. And I am using the help of Miss Ashley Hajimirzadeh's review to kind of go over my points as well, because she also brings up some very interesting points too. Okay, so basically, I'm not sure about you. Like, for me though, like Dream came up a lot, but it wasn't really like something that I wanted to like watch. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it was just something like, oh, this is being released. But it showed up so many times, and then plus we brought it up for the podcast, so I was like, okay, we'll watch it. But I was like really surprised at the quality of the overall filming and everything. And I think Park Seo-joon and IU were really good lead casts for those particular characters, because I think every character in this movie is just so wonky and unique in their own way that it kind of all just worked.
Yeah, it definitely did.
All right, so essentially, the whole movie is about Park Seo-joon, and he's actually a professional soccer player. But
let's use the proper term. I know we're Americans. It's supposed to be football.
Football, my bad. Football.
But in America, we call it soccer.
South Korea too?
Everyone calls it football but us. But obviously they have their own like Korean word for it, but translated it's football, because America has to be so special and call it soccer to not mix it up with American football.
Gotcha.
Which is derived from rugby. Anyway.
Well, that's a whole different conversation.
Yes. It's football.
Okay, so Park Seo-joon is a football player, and he's like quite a star player too in his team. So essentially, he plays for the Premier Leagues in the Korean Football League. And so the movie starts off with him in the middle of his game, and he's like opening up, and he's kind of competing with one of his teammates to get to the goal, which I don't know if you noticed, he actually had worked with him in a different movie. I believe it's Midnight Runners.
Don't.
But anyway, those two worked in another movie, which also did really, really well.
Okay, I'm trying to actually watch more movies. I watch a lot of K-dramas, where it's episodes, but I'm still lacking in the movie department, which I think I'm going to try to start finding ways to watch movies.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, that makes sense. So it's him and his teammate. So they're kind of catching up, or they're kind of competing to who's going to get the goal. So eventually the other teammate does come in, makes the goal. So he steals all the glory for that particular game. And this, in essence, puts Park Seo-joon, or Hongdae, which is his name in the movie, in a very bad mood. And so, like, you know how, like, they're walking out and there's, like, the press and paparazzi and all of that. So one of the reporters gets in his face, says some very rude things about his mom. And that kind of, like, ticks him off.
Well, yeah, he was already because they got like basically chewed out by like their coach and I'm assuming sponsors in the locker room after they lost. Mm-hmm. But even before they were heading towards their bus to leave, the reporter during the press conference they always have like after any game was already asking him like questions that didn't even have to deal with the game, like asking him questions about his mom, and they even had to be like, can we stick to questions about the game? He's like, sorry, do you think your mom affected the way that you play since she's on the run? It's like, sir.
It's like, excuse me. I'm surprised he wasn't banned.
I don't know. Some of these journalists, whether it's in sports or anything,
are bold.
I know people are talking about the loss of journalism a lot. I can't speak on that because I'm not a journalist or went to school for journalism, but it's just interesting. Also, I don't know if you're going to point this out or not. It took me a while to realize that this setting of the movie, because of what it's based on, I guess I can go ahead and talk about it now. Mm-hmm. So the movie is kind of like awareness for this organization called Homeless World Cup, since it has to deal with football. Mm-hmm. It says it in the beginning credits too, and I wrote it down. So in the beginning, it says Homeless World Tournament is the only world tournament that advocates for homelessness and challenges negative social perception through the sport of football. And this is a dramatized version of the 2010 events when Korea first participated in the HWC, or the Homeless World Cup. And apparently it's set in 2010, and it took me way too long than I'd like to admit to realize that it was in 2010. Because at first, like, I noticed when Park Seo-joon was taking out his phone, and I'm like, that don't look like an iPhone. I'm like, is that a BlackBerry? Who still has a BlackBerry? But then something else had happened. I think later on in the movie, it showed, like, it said year 2010. I'm like, oh, this is set in 2010. That makes so much sense. Plus, I'm sure you'll get into a little bit later, kind of jumping ahead in a spoiler. When they make memes about him, I had realized they only put the memes on YouTube, which if it was set today, the memes would be like on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok. Instagram, so yeah, if you look at like the social media aspect, that should have made me realize. So yeah, I'll talk more about the Homeless World Cup a little bit later, but I just wanted to bring that up because yeah.
So, okay, where were we? So he was in a bad mood because of being chewed out by sponsors and the coach. And then the reporter really just topped it off by asking him very irrelevant questions. So this is why I was saying, like, all the characters in this movie are just so wonky and weird. And I think for Park Seo-joon, I don't think he's played a character that was this, like, mental, I guess you could say. So essentially, he was like really mad that he was being asked all these very inappropriate questions. So he got into the reporter's face and kind of like poked him in the eye. And then that caused...
I feel like he has.
Huh?
I feel like he has. Itaewon Class?
He's tamer in that one, though. This one, he was... This one, it was just like...
I don't think he was as arrogant because of the different class situation, but I still feel like he was more bold in that sense.
I don't know. But yeah, so he kind of got in the reporter's face, poked him, and then obviously he got into some disciplinary action. So after that, the team...
And started the memes that I was talking about earlier. That's how he got the discipline action.
Yeah, the team got together. And they were kind of like coming up with ways to how to like redeem his reputation. But in the meantime, in the meeting, they were looking at all the different memes, which are honestly kind of like quite funny because some of them were like
hilarious
in the form of like a video game. And it was just like, it was hilarious. And so the best option they came up with was coaching for the Homeless World Cup. Mm-hmm. So I think this was the first time actually that I even heard of something called a Homeless World Cup. So, and I'm sure,
which is a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I don't know if you want to bring it up now or later.
We can bring it up
because
now.
Because this movie was based off 2010 was the first year Korea ever actually participated in it. So like I said, it is a world thing. I actually looked it up this morning, and I'll probably link the website, the actual official website, the homelessworldcup.org, in the description. Because interesting, I'm glad I looked it up this morning, because like I said, it is a real event that they do. It started in 1999, and for this year in 2024, it's taking place on September 21st until September 28th in Korea.
Oh, really?
So Korea's actually hosting it this year.
Nice.
Yeah, in Seoul at the Hanyang University. And just like in the movie, it's where they get a bunch of different countries to advocate for and bring awareness to homelessness. Now, I don't know if in the movie, if they get actual people that are homeless, or if they just get people who are professional football players to represent for their country. I saw a list of countries they invited, but I didn't want to say the countries because I don't know if these are actually the countries that are attending or is just ones they invited. But yes. And they also partner up with Big Issue Korea, which you'll actually see in the movie, because the people who are supposed to be, homeless in the movie, the guys that are on the team, you see them selling a magazine called Big Issue. I guess that has to deal with either maybe helping them financially with money. I'm not really sure, but it is an actual real magazine. So they've actually teamed up with the Homeless World Cup.
Movie, they are sponsored. And so it could be, that could be their sponsor.
Maybe, but I just wanted to say the Big Issue Korea is an actual real thing. And that's what's bringing the Homeless World Cup Foundation to Korea this year in September. Gotcha. So I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Interesting. Where did we leave off? All right. So now he has to, so in order to kind of get the steam off of him and stay out of the media.
Hang on before you go, just real quick. I also forgot to mention there actually is another movie on Netflix that is based off of the Homeless World Cup to talk about it. It came out March 29th in 2024, and it's called The Beautiful Game.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, apparently it's on Netflix, so I don't know if we want to try to look for it and watch it, but it's on the website. But yeah, I guess it came on Netflix this year in March.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's another movie to talk about the Homeless World Cup.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, instead of being kicked off the team, the coach and his team came up with the idea of him coaching for the homeless men for the Homeless World Cup in exchange of, being kicked off. And so this team is actually having a documentary made about them. And this is when Hongdae, Park Seo-joon, meets the girl that's making the documentary, Lee So-min, also known as IU.
Yes, the wonderful, beautiful IU.
Yes.
Put some respect on her name.
So yeah, so they meet to talk about the documentary, how they want to do things. And it's really interesting because naturally they clash, they butt heads, they don't see eye to eye. They honestly gave me sibling energy. So
they did.
Because they would just bicker back and forth, and the banter, it was so good.
It was also funny because when she was trying to be this sweet, innocent, just trying to be a movie filmer.
Yeah.
And then when she's like, can I talk to you on the side? And you saw her real personality. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Because they're both basically in it for the same thing of kind of getting their reputation
back. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, whether that's good or not, that's up to you to decide. But I also thought it was hilarious when they were talking and he's like, who are you? You're a totally different person who was out there. And I think he mentioned something. I think he called her crazy. And she's like, a crazy person in a crazy world. Isn't that technically normal? And I'm like, I have to start using that because that was a word.
Yeah. So I actually really liked, this is what I mean. They're all so kooky in their own way, but it works. It works. So it kind of I feel like it kind of made the movie become a little bit more like funnier.
Relatable, kind of?
Huh?
Almost relatable in my sense as well, too. Like, it didn't seem like, you know, these are real personalities and like different sides of people. It just made it seem more real to me.
Yeah. I don't know if I talk like that with somebody I met the first few times, but hey, it's a movie. Like, dramatized.
She also, I know, she also said it seemed like her job was on the line. She didn't care.
Yeah.
I feel like, what was the line that she said when she was talking to him? It'll come back to me later, but it was also funny.
Yeah.
Keep going. I don't remember right now.
Right. So they kind of talk it out. They do clash many times on how they want the documentary to go, because remember, Hongdae, Park Seo-joon, he doesn't really care at this point. He's just there just to pass time, essentially, and to get back into what he was originally doing. And Lee So-min, IU, she's there just to redeem herself, to get back into what she was meant to do. So for him, it was like, whatever. But for her, she needed to make this documentary shine. And so she would tell him, hey, why don't you pose like this? Why don't you do that? So basically making up certain situations so that way they can get like good footage. And so they had their tryouts, the initial tryouts, and that was when like all of our main players that we're introduced to later, we see how they actually play and whether or not they have a talent for football. And unfortunately, I think like just one person at that point had like some sort of semi-talent, but the rest were just in shambles. And like at that point, Hongdae was just like, oh God, do I have my work cut out for me? So
not only that, we get the backgrounds of their stories too, and like how they became homeless, which I thought was, I don't want to say interesting because I know it was like the point. I gotta find a better word than interesting.
It was insightful, I would say, because whenever, like, I don't know, I'm not sure, this is a different conversation, but I don't know if you noticed, but like in Florida, like the homeless population is seemingly increasing. So like whenever I see them on my like drive to work or back wherever I'm going, I'm just like, what caused them to get to that point? So with this documentary, you can kind of see that.
Yeah, that could be a whole different podcast because a lot can go into why they end up like that.
Yeah.
And that's why I like how they talked about their each different story, because as you can see, none of them was the same. Mm-hmm. But I mean, even here, if we want to talk about America in modern time, a lot of it can do with, you know, mental disabilities that we don't talk about.
I really appreciated too that like they didn't make majority of the stories like based off of like drugs or like gambling or, you know, like that type of thing, because it shows that not just those things can cause homelessness. So
exactly. It's financial reasons. Yeah. It's like I was saying earlier, the mental disabilities that we still don't properly treat people on.
Yeah.
I'll bring this up and talk about a little bit more, but there is a huge population of people that are in the LGBT community that end up homeless because they don't have families that support them. Mm-hmm. So it could literally be anything. And especially now it's scary because they are trying to like criminalize homelessness, but also don't want to try to fix it at the same time.
I mean, they could fix it, but our money is going elsewhere. But again, different conversation. Not me trying to throw shade, but I'm just pointing out.
No, throw all the shade because anyway.
Okay, back to the movie review or summary, I guess. So yeah, basically we're introduced to all of our players and their stories, and like which kind of adds into the overarching narrative. And so there were some players actually that were just could not for their life play football, but So-min told Hongdae to add them in just so it makes the documentary look more wholesome, more emotional, I guess you could say.
Yeah, like tug at people's feelings and like their sympathy and all that.
Yeah. And it makes for a good like story arc too.
Yeah.
So they started from nothing, improved, that type of thing. So straight off the bat, they were creating situations where it felt like for Hongdae, Park Seo-joon, that it was like impossible to come through, especially when like his players were not capable of like, you know, doing a simple dribble or shooting the ball or passing the ball, that type of thing. So basically they come up with different ways to kind of train them, and eventually they get to some sort of standard, where to the point where they're actually able to kind of work together and play, because during certain scenes you can see that they were playing, but eventually a few of the players would like get into arguments or into fights and things like that. And so it was just a lot of work for just poking somebody in the eye.
Like, I know. Plus, I know the way that he is. And again, he didn't want to be there in the first place, so that heightened it. But it's like, cut them some slack. These are not professionals. A lot of them were in like the age range, I'm pretty sure, was between like 30 and 60.
Yes.
There's no way for them to like do anything to where they stay active like that. Yeah. So it's like, sir, calm down. Yeah.
So like we were talking about earlier, the storylines go into the men themselves, what their lives were like, how they became homeless, if they had family, if they didn't have family. We got to see some of their struggles, like their day-to-day struggles. And then it kind of goes into it a little bit later, like about the documentary itself, the purpose of it, and why Somin really, really wants to have a really solid documentary so that eventually she can become a director. So over time, they do their practices and everything. And so eventually the one team player who did know how to play football well does get injured. And this kind of forces Hongdae to go out to find other players. And so he eventually finds a kid who sells, I believe, magazines in the subway.
It's the Big Issue I was talking about earlier. They all sell the Big Issue.
Yes, the Big Issue. So he's basically selling this magazine, the Big Issue, in the subway, but he's actually looking for his missing friend. So I don't know if you wanted to go into more, like what his story was. So he eventually finds him and he does record him. So
yeah, it's just, again, I don't understand why, because they didn't give us how old he was, right?
I think he's early 20s, late teens. Okay. I believe.
I don't understand why they gave him the saddest backstory of everybody, just in my opinion, because yes, trigger warning, it starts off with both his parents were trying to do like, there's a word for it when they try to like commit suicide together.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called, but like they try to commit suicide together and he ended up surviving and he was 7 and then ended up in an orphanage and then got bullied, which is how he made his friend, that one girl, I forgot her name, which I'm not going to lie. When I first watched it, when they were getting older, I was a little skeptical about her. I was afraid that she was kind of like using him because they had mentioned he has, I'm not going to say this right. Aphasia?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you know about this? Because that was my first time hearing about it.
Aphasia is basically where you can't speak, or in certain times it's hard for you to speak. So yeah.
Yeah. So I have the actual definition, just because when I first heard it, I don't know why I thought I read like Asperger.
Actually, traumatic situations can cause that.
Yeah. So from the Mayo Clinic, basically an overview was talking about how asphyia is a disorder that affects how you communicate, and it can impact your speech as well as the way you write and understand both spoken and written language. It usually happens suddenly after a stroke or a head injury, but it can also come on gradually from like a slow growing brain tumor, which I don't believe he had. Obviously, again, like I said earlier, his parents tried to like off the whole family. So I'm sure due to that and whatever they may have done to him caused like brain damage. So yeah. And then I'm just sure just because the way he was bullied and stuff also caused a lot of like social
anxiety and probably,
anxiety. Yeah. Because that's why I was getting it confused with like if it was Asperger or not, because I know that also, which I was looking that up as well, because I believe that's what one of the homeless guys who had a friend who has a mental disability that Park Seo-joon's character starts getting close with. They don't say what hers is, but hers may be that. And I know when I was researching it earlier, apparently now, thankfully, with more research, they have started to categorize it under the autism spectrum. So, yeah, I just wanted to, bring that up for more awareness of these things, because we kind of talked about this in Attorney Ooh. It's like, I appreciate when they talk about these things to bring awareness for them. Of course, it's a drama. So, like, I don't know if the way they have them, like, acting is appropriate or not. And I want to let someone who's part of that community to, like, actually say, like, hey, this is healthy representation, or if it's not. But at least it's being talked about and brought, like, to awareness. So, and I even learned something looking up like what that was because I didn't know what that was either. So, yeah. Also, kind of side note, and then we can continue. If he's in his early 20s, like obviously he's younger than all the other guys. I'm just thinking in general when it comes to like the homeless community in Korea, how does that work for military since it's mandatory?
I don't know.
If someone, like, listen, I know we always beg for like emails, but if someone who actually knows about that and like lives in Korea or is Korean, please let me know. I'm actually very curious about that unless like I can research it. That just came to me now when I was sitting here thinking, especially for him, I'm like, well, did he serve like in the military? Because I know they don't really get paid in the military, but they at least get something.
Yeah.
Again, it's basically pennies. But I was just wondering, I'm like, for him, how does that work? Because since it's mandatory.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I didn't think about it from the military perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't think there's somebody going out there on the streets recruiting too. So it's like,
it's not like America, but that's also predatory. But again, I gotta be careful what I say. So
another conversation
free speech
for another day.
Listen, okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
All right, so back to our summary. So yes, we have our new replacement for the injured player. And so basically this kid knows how to play. Like he plays very, very well. But however, his issue is like he can only play under certain conditions because he does have a lot of, like we were getting into his backstory, he does have a lot of trauma.
Oh, I forgot to mention why his friend, he's looking for her. Because I said I was afraid that she was using him until apparently she was at a work trip and they were camping and everyone on that work trip basically got in an accident and she went missing. And like the way they showed the river, I'm like, bro, I'm pretty sure she's dead.
Yeah.
No one just wants to tell him that because again, yeah.
But he stuck it out though.
Going through it. I know. And I feel like he knows that she is dead, but he just doesn't want to
accept it.
It's a coping mechanism, basically. Yeah. So I just want to make sure I bring that up before we go further. Why his backstory again is the most traumatic, in my opinion.
And it also serves actually as a motivation for him to join the soccer team too, because then he can broaden his search.
Park Seo-joon actually tells him that too when they like go and look for him because they end up finding out that he's looking for her. So he tells him that like, hey, this could also be like, you see them over there, they have those cameras, she may actually come across this documentary, you may be able to find her easier. So
and that really honestly I think was the hitting point for him. It's like, okay, yeah, that actually makes sense. And plus it kind of gives him something else to do besides you know, being in the subway trying to look for her
and getting chased by the police.
That too.
Because the police keeps getting on him about like putting up the posters and stuff. I don't know how the law works as far as like doing that over there, but yeah.
So he becomes the replaced player, and then so they kind of come in, they play, he shows his thing, and so I think just to bring everything together, they end up playing a kids soccer team because
which was so funny. It was hilarious. So funny. The way they just like got annihilated by like these elementary kids, middle school maybe.
No more than like 10 years old, I would want to say.
Yeah.
So they play with the kids soccer team, and somehow they managed to tie a score with them. And so I think from that point they kind of got like more confidence. It's like, oh, okay, we can do this. But it's so interesting how like they needed to play like a kids team to kind of gain that confidence. So eventually they got to a point where they were able to like believe in themselves, like, okay, we can actually do this. So a little bit later, they head off to the actual Homeless World Cup. But once they get there, of course, there's always some sort of drama. There were some high schoolers who were kind of being bullies, I guess, and they were acting like gangsters. And so Hongdae, he kind of stepped in and took care of that as soon as they got there.
Wait,
so
at the World Cup?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the Japan team?
Yeah, so they're like, I don't know. Where are the high schoolers? Was that not after they got there, or was it before?
You know, so you're talking about the high schoolers who were bullying the I don't know if she's autistic. I don't want to call her autistic. Remember one of the homeless guys, because he's jealous of Park Seo-joon's character because
right.
Yes, that's what you're talking about.
That was before they left.
That was way before they left because he actually, Park Seo-joon's character, you know, got in trouble because of that and got arrested, which that part was also funny when they were like harassing that one police officer to like drop the case or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't, because see, why am I blanking on names? I wish I had names. The one guy who stays with her sometimes, like I said, he doesn't really like Park Seo-joon because one of her like niches is football. So like I think Park Seo-joon's character was the first person to actually get her to like actually interact with other people, to speak. She showed favoritism because he is a football player. So like when the one guy was talking about how she never shares like her food with anyone.
She shared
the
with Park
first day she met. Park Seo-joon, like she shared the snack, and that's what motivated him to actually come back to the team.
Yeah.
So there was an incident that happened to where she went to the park at night by herself, and a bunch of high schoolers came and was basically picking on her, especially since she had a disability. And Park Seo-joon that day was already in a bad mood because his mom, who we kind of mentioned earlier, the reporter was picking on him. He got caught again because I guess she's a scammer and was in jail. He went to go see her in jail, and that conversation did not go very well, especially showing like their dynamic. He was talking about like how she was never a mother and things like that. So that also picking on his friend because he actually started really, I think she helped him open up a lot too. Because with one of the players who has a daughter whose mother is married to an Australian man and they're moving to Australia soon.
Right.
You know, he lent them his apartment so they can have dinner together, and he stayed with her during that.
Father-daughter quality time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that story was also very sad. Yeah. So you could tell that man really loves his daughter. Oh my God. And she really loves him too.
And I loved how she was very supportive too.
Yeah. So that part was sweet. But yes, that's when he beats up the high schoolers for her. And then it took her taking IU's character and the manager to the scene where they realized someone was in the apartment, like filming the whole incident. So they were able to get that video out. And that actually bumped up Park Seo-joon's reputation before they even left for the World Cup. Like he was able to actually get his reputation back from that video of the high schoolers because they were, you know, picking on a mentally disabled person. So.
Oh, right. And that was when he was going through his whole internal, like, should I go? Should I not?
Because his manager called him back, was like, well, you don't really need to do this anymore because of when you were protecting that woman. Your reputation's back. Let's actually try to get you to do a celebrity. They were trying to get him to do a variety show in the jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a turning point because even when he told the team, like, I can't go with you guys anymore, you can already see the shift in him that he was actually starting to care about everyone.
He was into this. Yeah. He was committed.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. I don't know how I missed that. Oh, Big Chunk.
That huge Big Chunk. Thankfully, I watched this recently, how I remember. Again, I apologize for not remembering names. I should have wrote them down, but usually when I'm not in charge, I don't.
Yeah, right. And so, so that whole incident happens, and he kind of, well, at that point, though, like the team, he had kind of already, I don't think he officially told the team he wasn't coming back, but they kind of had an idea after that incident that he may not come back. So they all end up at the airport on their way to the World Cup.
He did. He told them their last practice that he was trying to soften the blow, but then one of the guy who's friends with that disabled woman, I'm not sure if like he actually likes her, like has a crush on her, but like he was the one who said, oh, so he's basically not coming back because he said he's not going to come back like the day before you guys leave.
Yeah.
But he did tell them.
Okay. Right. But so at that point, they were like, okay, so we're just going to have to do this on our own. So, but IU was with them, though.
And morale went down a lot.
Yeah. So they were at the airport, and then voila, he shows up And so,
which was very funny because he didn't say anything. Like they were just talking about like how it didn't feel the same, the energy. Yeah. They'll try their best. And one of them looks over and he's just there walking next to them in a suit. And he's like, hey, how's it going? And they all kind of just like, why are you here?
Right.
Also, why are you in a suit for the airport?
Right. So yeah, I'm kind of glad they were able to, or he was able to overcome that little hiccup.
Yeah. He was basically like, forget this. I care about these people way too much. Yeah. I actually started forming a bond. Like, I'm going to go be their coach.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, airport, they eventually make it to the Homeless World Cup. And then when they start playing, they were struggling very much in their first match. And it was interesting to see because a lot of the other teams were actually decently, they were good.
That's what I was saying. I'm like, so do they actually get homeless people in other countries or just players who represent the countries for this like event? Because it seemed like they were the only team that was actually homeless.
Yeah, because that's actually interesting you brought that up. Because when I was watching that, I'm like, these people don't seem like they're homeless. Except for the Korea team, none of them seemed like they were homeless.
And I don't know if it's like that for the real event or not.
So that was interesting. So they struggle with their first match, and then Somin she starts like freaking out because like, oh my God, because in her mind, she still has that documentary she needs to do. So what she does, which I think is kind of intelligent on her part, is like she goes to the Brazilian team and she asks if their reserved players can play on the Korean team too.
It's only because 2 of them had gotten hurt really badly during the first game against, I forgot the country they were playing against. That's the only reason she did that.
Yeah. But which was still smart though, instead of saying, oh, let's try to make it without the 2 players too. Which also, I didn't know they could do that, is to go ask other teams.
Yeah, but I don't know if they would have gotten disqualified or not for not having enough players. Yeah,
that could have been it too.
Also, congratulations to her and for her going there, because if you notice, they would not have survived without her.
Yeah.
Because she was the only one who was actually able to communicate to like the organization in English. And then when the incident happened in Japan, I'm like, all right, multilingual IU queen, keep these men in check.
Right.
Because they would have been completely lost without you.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's the only reason they went to the Brazilian team was because 2 of the players got really hurt.
It was interesting she went to the Brazilian one, though, because, I mean, Brazilian people can play.
I don't see. So I don't know if, like, Brazil was her choice or when she went to go ask, like, hey,
they were the first ones there.
They were the only ones that were available and had extra players when she found that out. I don't think that was, like, they got to choose a country. I think when she talked to the woman about, like, is there any way we can get, like, extra players when she read the rules was like, hey, we want from this team, which honestly, as we saw in the movie, wasn't as beneficial as they thought. Because, like, yeah, they were scoring and yeah, they were playing better. But yeah, it seemed you could tell morale was still starting to get down because it just didn't seem like it was from them, which I understand. So also, that's why I'm like, this is why I know nothing about football. Is real football this violent? Is soccer this?
It's not violent, but it is intense. It is intense.
They be pushing each other that much?
Some do.
Okay, that's why I was like.
But they also reprimand players like that because you're not supposed to play all pushy.
I'm surprised they didn't get reprimanded enough.
Yeah.
Like this unnecessary roughhousing, whatever it's called, they were like literally beating them up at some points, all the teams.
Yeah.
But notice how it was mostly the European teams doing that. I'm gonna just say it quietly. Okay.
But you also have to remember they're not really playing by the rules here. Like, yes, there's a set of rules, but also it's not like official football.
But that makes it even more asinine to me. Since it's not official football, you would think they would want to play more friendly.
I don't know. Competitive people are not.
Because I don't think they were winning money or anything, that unless they were and it just wasn't said. But still.
I'm sure you win something. Because why would you go to another country just for like a kudos, you know?
Well, it's for raising awareness for homelessness. It is for still a purpose.
Yeah.
A charity organization.
So there is money involved. Yeah.
But I don't know if the teams get money. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's just raising money for the organization to help homelessness or if the teams and players themselves get money. There is a difference with that. Either way, it's still supposed to be like a charity and a good cause. That's why I'm like, when you put all that together, the roughness that was happening to me seemed very unnecessary.
Agreed.
Especially when the like field is like 10 times smaller than an actual, soccer/football field.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But yeah, where were we? Okay, yeah. So they were playing. Some of our players, the Korean players, were injured, and so Somin went back and asked if she could have some of the reserved Brazilian players to come play. The team agreed, so they were able to add in those Brazilian players. So when they came in, they were scoring like nobody's business. But however, everybody noticed it wasn't really the Korean team that was doing anything, it was mostly the Brazilian players. And like it was something that was starting to become actually problematic because at that point, like you were saying, morale was decreasing within the team. And also the crowd was noticing it as well because it was really just those two that were handling the whole entire game.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting that the crowd even cared about that.
Yeah. And so it led to criticism really because it made it seem like the Koreans didn't have talent to do anything worthwhile. So in their final games, what they did was they benched the Brazilian players. And so at this point, it was really just the Korean team on its own. And so that kind of worked in their favor because they were able to show that they did have skills. They were able to score. They were able to play a decent game. They didn't win, however, but they did win the public's opinion, I guess you could say, because everyone was literally rooting for them. And at the end, they ended up becoming a decent team. So overall, that was basically where we leave off at, is they become an audience favorite. And that's that.
Well, I think it had to deal with more than just with skill. Honestly, I don't think skill, they really, especially the audience, cared at this point. I just think they saw more of them like actually putting in an effort and trying.
Yeah, so it was like more encouraging, which helped them, I guess, play better. So overall, the film ends with Hongdae. He's back in his original element. He's rejoined the team. He's at the pitch where he's with his club team, and then in the audience you see the homeless team cheering him on along with Somin, and that's basically where the movie ends off.
And his mom too, because didn't mention there's a part where before he decided to go, I guess he did end up bailing his mom out because that was part of their argument. And she's never been to one of his games before just because of what she was doing when he was growing up as far as like scamming people and probably in and out of jail and stuff. So they also had a very deep, meaningful conversation about that too.
Yeah.
And it was funny while she's like, well, you always do the opposite of what I tell you. So go to the jungle. Don't go to the World Cup thing. And that was like reverse psychology on him. But anyway, it was meaningful too because she was actually there with some type of church guy that she just met.
Well, the church guy kind of helped her out of a pickle when she was running away that one time.
Yeah.
But it was cute. At the ending, they kind of ended off in the same area that they started in. So, but this time he has like a whole second family, I guess you could say, cheering him on.
Hey guys, so it's Simone with my PSAs. Y'all usually know when you hear that dinghy noise. And Nafis is actually here with me for a PSA for the first time.
Yeah.
There was one thing we forgot to talk about that I did want to touch on because it had to deal with what is his name again? I hate that I'm so bad with names.
His name is Kim In-sun.
Okay,
which is the kid from the subway.
Yes, the kid from the subway who is like their better player. When they were at the game, because Nafis had accidentally thought the teenagers was the Japan team because they got into a scuffle. And again, that's when I praise like IU for being the multilingual queen that she is, because she was able to fuse that situation. It's because since he's looking for his friend, he actually thought one of the girls from the Japanese team like was his friend. I guess they look similar because that caused Park Seo-joon to like get involved and the hothead that he is like start fighting. And it's like, sir, again, calm down. But yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about that defeat. So I thought that was important because that also talks about like, again, his motivation for looking for her and being on the team, because that actually helps them towards the end too, as far as bringing up morale when they go back and play on the team. When he gets benched for something and Park Seo-joon's actually kind of like talking to him, and like he gives him a headband to like push his bangs out of his eyes, and he's like, that's from your friend, I think her name was Yumi. So I don't know if he again realized that's not actually her, but I thought it was interesting because it wasn't her.
I thought it was her though. It wasn't her?
No,
she didn't
it was
recognize
not her.
him? Oh.
It was not her. It was just a girl that looked like her. It was not her. Because the same thing happened towards the end when we got, the happy endings, and they showed like what happened after the game. We get him in the street again selling the big issue. He's obviously a little bit more confident. He's like screaming big issue. He cut his bangs, which I thought it was so cute the way he was trying to advertise it. But he sees another woman on the street. She axes for a big issue, and I guess like she looks like her too, because once he sells it to her and she starts walking away, like he tells her, hey, be happy. And I thought that was so interesting and important, because I feel like that was him coming to terms like, okay, in my mind, even though I don't want to say she's actually dead, but she is dead. And that was him like letting go of his friend because he was able to find like new friends and a family.
Right. So it's a good thing, honestly, that he ran into Park Seo-joon and that he was recruited and everything, because it helped him basically overcome that.
Yeah, that tragedy, that awful tragedy of everything else that he went through, of losing a friend who, because I think they even said like in the orphanage, she was the one to get him to start speaking, because he wasn't speaking for a while. But of course, I mean, he was 7.
Yeah.
So,
hey, trauma has a way of coming back to you in different ways. So
it really does. And then like, we'll talk about this now in this essay. I appreciate how they all ended up like kind of getting at least something at the end of it. Like the older guy was able to buy a house because when he got injured during practice, he had talked about how he was doing this to like show his family that he's changed. Because I did mention that when he was a businessman, he, was cheating on his wife. He was very neglectful, verbally abusive, doing all this crime. And like he had a daughter, but then like his daughter obviously got old enough to like have a baby of her own. So like he wanted to be able to be there for the baby, which is also interesting. That goes and can be another episode of like how sometimes parents use grandchildren as a way to make up for their mistakes for their children. But we ain't gonna talk about that too much. But yeah, and then the guy who has the 13-year-old daughter who is leaving for Australia soon, how they were able to spend that last moments together. I thought the scene when like she was getting in the car with her mom, which also I didn't like the mom that much. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah,
she was so like I know obviously y'all are divorced, but do you ever even care about this man? Like he's homeless, for crying out loud. I'm glad you were able to find someone else and a foreigner at that. Y'all can move to Australia together, but it's like she didn't even say one word to him when he was saying goodbye to his daughter. I thought that was crazy.
But I think that's more of a writing oversight.
You think so? You think that's more of like TV writing and not? Because I feel like there are people out there that are like that.
There are, but I don't think she was ever the focus of that storyline, so that's probably why they didn't make her more nurturing, I guess. But
maybe
I think it was more a writing issue than like the character itself.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was just wondering because she just said nothing while they were saying their last goodbyes.
Yeah. So, which normally you would expect them to say something. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And like with that situation too, it's like, I don't know, especially since, he still doesn't really have like a stable job or anything, like how that works for if she's able to go back to Korea to visit him, or like, because it seemed like they were saying he won't be able to see her until she's like a full grown adult to be able to afford to go over there, which I find very sad.
That is really sad.
Especially since you're not moving her to like a different city or like 2 hours away. She's going to a whole different country.
Yeah.
So
but there are situations like that though in real life. So
that's true. And obviously I wish I was able, like when we did The Glory, to look up more how like custody works, because I'm assuming the mother has full custody of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the one guy with the woman who has the disability, you know, she pays more attention to him now since he's a football player. I thought that was so cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to come in and talk about like the character, like the players a little bit more, especially him, because I thought that was huge character growth that I didn't want to push past. Of like, there were incidents where he thought he, quote unquote, like found his friend, but it wasn't actually his friend.
His friend, yeah.
But yeah, it was thanks to the soccer team and Park Seo-joon's character to where I think internally he was able somewhere to realize that like he has friends in a family now, like a newfound family.
Yeah.
So he can let her go. I guess so that's
why it's important to be open to new opportunities or new things, because you never know. It might just heal you in the process. So,
I mean, hey, that's what we say community is about. But anyway, I guess it was mostly me that wanted to come in to talk about that. I didn't know if you had anything to add, Nafis.
No, I pretty much agreed with what you said.
Okay. Well, let's get back to the episode.
But yeah, so that is basically the movie. Overall, it was pretty cute. I wouldn't say it's like the most original idea, but I do, like you mentioned before, I do appreciate that they raised awareness in terms of like the homelessness and relating that to a sport. So that was pretty good. But yeah, what did you think of the movie?
What do you mean by it wasn't like an original idea? I'm just curious.
Well, because I've seen movie, because it reminds me a lot of this one movie in India called Chak De India, which is kind of like the same premise. The coach was like a star player back in his day, once in his day, and then so in order to redeem himself, he has to coach the girls' cricket team, I think it was. And so, yeah, so it was a storyline that I had already seen before, so that's why it didn't feel original to me. So
no, that makes sense. I'm pretty sure there's a storyline like that in American movie that, again, I wouldn't know because I don't care about sports. So I feel like the only maybe is Remember the Titans anywhere like this or no? That had to deal more with like race tensions though.
One of my favorites. I don't think so. I don't think it's similar. Because that one was more, that had more of a racial focus. This is more of like a socioeconomic situation.
Okay. Yeah. That's the only like sports movie I've ever watched, and not on my own because they showed it in school.
I think we saw it in school too. I really enjoyed that movie. It's one of my favorites.
It's a good movie. I just probably would have never watched it on my own if I had a choice, especially back then. Yeah, so
that's fair. But yeah.
But no, I enjoyed the movie. It was actually really good. Like I said, that's why I'm trying to watch more Korean movies, even though I think like dramas are doing a pretty good example. Like, because, you know, streaming services helps them, I guess, not have to be as tame as like cable. Yeah. So they're able to tell more stories that are more like, I don't want to say darker, because it's like it is more on like real life, or like not giving Korea the rose tinted glasses that many people have when they watch K-dramas. Like they supposed to represent a whole freaking country and everybody when it doesn't. So I really enjoyed, because it's also just things like I don't even think about like outside of America, of like how these social issues are the same all around. Because it's like when you think of Korea, the first thing you don't think about is like the homeless population. No. So I appreciate them bringing that issue to light, and also that it is based off a real organization to like bring that organization into the spotlight and how they're trying to help as well. Because I also wrote down the end credits. Give me one moment. Because it also talked about in the end credits of this movie is said in 2010. So apparently they used to refer to them as street people, or in Korean, I'm going to butcher this, it's nosukin or nosukinja. Was a commonplace term in Korea, but the word homeless is used instead today, as the former tends to minimize the scope of the housing problem, which is also actually interesting because I noticed in America, instead of homeless, we're starting to use houseless people, I guess is a less offensive term. I am not sure if that's working or not, but either way, it still talks about it. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, it's different because as far as America and how we treat our
people,
homeless people, well, yeah, people in general, but especially the homeless community. And like I had mentioned, especially nowadays with like cracking down on a lot of laws to like criminalize them basically as if they can help that. And they had chose to be homeless, which we all know they didn't. Yeah. And like creating all these like asinine structures and like parks and stuff to keep them out. Like you notice how like they're making a lot of benches like to where people can't sleep on it, or like just a lot of inhumane things. Yeah. But still, I appreciate this movie for bringing that awareness, and that I always like things like that to where it's still like a good heartfelt movie. Right. But I learned something from it. So yeah. Also, I think just me as a person is changing because I started, like I said, to try to research more. Like when they brought up what the one kid has, I went to go Google. I'm like, oh, what is this? Because I never heard of it. So
yeah, I think they did a really good job of talking about a very touchy subject. Because like you were saying, when we think of Korea, we don't think of homelessness. So the way they approached this topic, I think, was very clever in a way that it didn't make it seem like it didn't really penalize Korea, but at the same time, it made them seem more like aware of like their social issues. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't make them like it's still doing the job of like, okay, Korea is still this great, beautiful country, but at the same time, it's also highlighting their issues, but in a way that makes it seem approachable. Yeah.
Because another thing too, what I was going to bring up, how we didn't really get into the details of each player and like how they became homeless, but I do like how they mentioned that of like whether it was because one of them got injured like doing construction work. Another guy, which I don't know if they ever proved wrong or not, was a quote unquote gangster. He said the older gentleman was a businessman and had a business company that ended up going under, especially he was doing like a lot of criminal stuff, and then like he neglected his family. We talked about, what was his name? The kid. Is there a way you could
Let me see if I can look
it up? Or because I was going to bring up how I had mentioned there's different reasons during when they were in Hungary. I don't know how to pronounce that country correctly. Okay. The one player with the really long hair, I was wondering why we didn't hear like his backstory. But when they were talking about after the morale being down of the Brazilian players, I know he was trying to lighthearten the situation, but he had mentioned that he was gay and how when he told his father that his father passed out and he ran away and never went back. And like I said, especially in the US, that's like there's such a huge population of people that are homeless
because Kim In-sung, they have the kid.
Kim In-sung? Yeah. Okay, yes, him with the tragic backstory, but the other guy with the long hair and how he brought that up because, like I said, especially here in the US, I just know there's a huge population of homeless people because of that, and they didn't have family to like go to or support. Yeah. So it's like I also appreciate them for bringing that up. Again, especially knowing how like the LGBT community is all over the world, but especially in Korea too. So I appreciated that a lot, even though, again, I know not really for comedic relief, because I know someone says a joke to break the tension. I'm also very glad that like I was afraid it was going to go a little homophobic in a way, but like they actually accepted him. So yeah.
Like I was saying, they touched the very sensitive topics very maturely and nicely. So
yes,
overall, well done.
It was. I really enjoyed this movie. I tried to watch it a second time before we recorded, but I didn't have enough time. Yeah. I only got to like 30 minutes in, but still, even like just the itty bitty I was rewatching, I really enjoyed it. I enjoy the characters. Very funny. I need to broaden my vocabulary.
Yeah, like I was saying, I enjoyed the kookiness or like the goofiness each character brought, which kind of like made the whole movie wholesome. So it was nice. What would you rate it?
I also remember the thing IU. Oh, I was going to say, I also remember the thing I was talking about earlier that IU said. I think Park Jun said something about like she needs to get on medication, how crazy she is. And she's like, I cannot afford that, sir. You're just this is why I'm like this. And I'm like, also real. Also, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, her dialogue was actually quite realistic, honestly.
It was. I also like that too because to me, her character broke that persona she was trying to push on, as far as, especially the way like Korean women are stereotyped as being like the quiet one, just, be quiet, look pretty, do your job, all that. And she was able to like do those comebacks with her banter, her and Park Seo-joon. It showed that she did, can think for herself, how strong-willed she was.
Again, I love like that it was not romanticized.
That too.
Kept it very like focused towards the actual issue. So loved that part. Yeah. But yeah, what would you rate it?
Honestly, I would give this a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. This is probably going to be one of my favorite.
I was going to say 8.5.
8.5, yeah. Yeah, I'll add it to like, I don't know if it'll be like how I felt when I first watched The Glory, because my God.
The Glory is like its own category.
Yeah. A little bit more dramatized, but still, like, I did appreciate this movie and what it talked about and the issues that it touched on. So, from everybody. Also, when they went to Hungary, like, again, I know they have to represent being in a different country, but I truly appreciated the diversity I was seeing. Yeah. So, I enjoyed that one scene of when they were partying, because that's how the one guy like injured himself. And the reason why they had to get the Brazilian team was because he was dancing with the other players, and he injured himself while dancing. He hurt his wrist. So yeah, I appreciate it. That's what I mean, is like, that's why I didn't understand at the beginning when I'm watching the violence. I'm like, so y'all can like check on each other when you're not playing and like have fun and party together, but like you're trying to kill each other on the field.
Hey, that's what competitiveness does. It brings out the worst in you sometimes.
They're like, I guess maybe that also explains I'm not competitive in that way.
Yeah.
I don't care enough to hurt someone like that to like get my way.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I don't know if I told you, but like I was coaching tennis this past spring, and like, so when
girl, you have like 1,000 jobs, I can never keep up.
But it's interesting though, because like I'm like doing this in the capacity of a coach, and so when I'm talking to all these other teams, you kind of actually do see that aggressiveness on the court or the field or wherever it is. So that level of aggressiveness does exist, even with the coaches themselves, like the way they talk, the way they handle themselves. It's like, it's kind of cocky, but like, I guess that's something you kind of need in sports. So there's that.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe it. Oh yeah, I appreciated a lot that this movie offered.
Yeah.
So well, you already said yours. You said 8.5.
Yeah, I said 8.5.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Not
like the explanation I gave, or of why your rating is 8.5, or no?
Why? I felt like it was a good movie. I don't know. I just felt like it could go a little bit more into detail, but that's just a me thing. They touched on everything that I felt they needed to touch on, but I could have used more depth in some of the stuff. So, for example,
so we never done. Yeah, I was gonna say no. I was actually gonna ask you, because we never done this before. Like, if there was something you can change or add on, what would you do in like the 2-hour frame they got?
I think the whole like narrative with Park Seo-joon and his mom, I don't think that part was necessary, in my opinion. So instead of dedicating screen time to like that particular storyline, they could have spent more time into the individual characters. They could have done that, or they could have shown, I don't know. I feel like it was well done, but for me, it was like just an 8.5.
Okay.
Because I have seen other like sports documentaries and movies, and they do go into more details, I guess. So, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, I guess since he's technically the main character, I understand why they did that and explained him and the way he is, especially like how you mentioned at the beginning when he was basically competing with his own teammate to get the ball, of like why he doesn't like coming into like second place. So I don't know. It kind of, for me, it showed like the neglect that he had to grow up with, and basically trying to have to like prove himself to others because he didn't have like that or that support. So
yeah,
I also see, because like they didn't do the same thing with like IU's character, but again, she wasn't like, I know she was a lead, but I know her character wasn't the main.
I would have loved to see actually the background of her character, because she's crazy. She's more crazy than him. So
I kind of would have liked that too. If they were going to do it for Park Seo-joon's character, I would have liked them to do it for IU's character. So I don't think we knew enough about her, actually, because I wanted to know like what reputation.
Yeah, other than the capacity of like a director, we don't really know much. Oh yeah.
Okay.
But we can end it off here.
Okay, well, that was a great discussion. Yeah, it was a great discussion. Yeah. So we hope you enjoyed it too. This has been I Was Thinking. You can follow us on. They officially got rid of the Twitter domain, so it's X now, but I'ma still call it Twitter. I don't care. On Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as I Was Thinking Pod. Let us know what you think about the movie or this episode in case we missed anything at iwasthinkingpod@gmail.com. And don't forget to rate us the highest ratings on whatever platform you're using. I think I pretty much said anything. That's everything, right? Okay. Why do I feel like it's usually more? It's been a while. Yeah. I've been Simone. That's been the feast. We've been I Was Thinking, and we will catch ya next time.
Bye.
Okay, bye.